supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night to everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Supply Chain. I'm Audrey Ross. I'm your guest host for today. Sarah Barnes-Humphrey is off on vacation, getting a well-deserved break. We know we've seen her sort of all over the place, everything around supply chain to tech. So we're tuning in to me today. So my name is Audrey Ross. I'm mainly the trade compliance space. I've sort of moved away from logistics and supply chain. I'm the past president at 𝐓𝐡𝐨𝐿 Toronto. That's a group that I'm happy to represent. It's a nonprofit that supports the advancement of women and underrepresented groups in trade. So it's close to my heart. And we do work around a lot of high-level networking and education as well for entrepreneurs, trade practitioners, and the like. I'm tuning in today from, I'm also a little bit on vacation, but I'm doing one of those hybrid things, I guess. So I'm tuning in from Port Sydney, which is in the Muskokas outside of Toronto, Canada. So if you hear birds in the background, if you hear the sound of a river going, that's what's happening over here. So I'm really having a good time. So I'm coming into my second week, so it's been great. So let's kick off the show. We've got a special guest today, Rose Genele, who's joining us. She'll join us in a couple of minutes, but I'll talk about some of the great things that have been happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we have episode 478, which is with Business Fueling Made Easy with 𝐓𝐿 Pro. So Sarah talked to Rob and a little bit, obviously, about his journey and how 𝐓𝐿 has evolved over the past 60 years that it's been in business. And it looked at how it's different from a traditional credit card kind of business, how they looked at, the different fleet options and utilizing those cards, and then also going through a little bit between what they're excited about for 2025, kind of for that second half. And then the next episode on the podcast was the Women in Supply Chain episode with Lena Castaneda. And this was a great one too. I love the Women in Supply Chain series as well. It focuses again on kind of an industry leader who's in this business. And she talked about, being named an industry rising star, the importance of staying coachable, which I think we can all relate to in this industry, and why differences are our superpowers. So definitely check both of those episodes out. So episode 478 and 479. All right. And then I think we'll bring up Rose into the conversation. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Audrey.
Hi.
My name is Rose. I'm the CEO of The Opening Door. We are a responsible AI integration agency. And so we support organizations as they embark or they continue their AI journey. And we approach it from a lens of ethics, safety, compliance, transparency. We feel that these values are very important when we're considering interacting with the new technology or a quickly advancing technology like AI. And so I'm excited to be here on the Thoughts and Coffee show today with you all.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to ask everybody, where are you sitting today, Rose?
Oh, I am in Toronto.
In Toronto? Yeah. So you've got your Toronto contingent here. If everyone else who's tuning in can drop in the chat where they're from. I see we've got Stephen from South Carolina. Where in South Carolina? Because my dad's a South Carolinian, so he's outside of Greenville. So drop where you're at there. And then we also have Mike tuning in from Copenhagen in Denmark, which is great. So we like to have sort of this whole geography represented around the world. Tell us a little bit, Rose, what happened last week in Toronto? We had Toronto Tech Week. Yeah, so
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Tech Week? And also you had kind of a special event as well that you were up to. So tell us a bit about Tech Week, kind of the overview, and then we'll go into a little bit about your event as well.
Yeah, so Toronto Tech Week is an absolute staple here in Toronto. It's happened for several years. It's always in the summer. It's this kind of decentralized conference, festival, happening of events throughout the city. I was, fortunate enough to attend some events. I also hosted an event for the Opening Door. We did a human-centered AI and the future event. We hosted it at Thinking Box Studios in Toronto. And it was a great gathering of academics, artists, creatives, brand partners that, shared their experiences with AI, how they're integrating it into their work, how they're integrating it into their life, and how they are also using it in a responsible way. And so, like I talked about, those ethics, the transparency, the safety, and just making sure it's centered around human values. And when I say that, I mean that we're using AI to kind of augment, the things that we do and not to replace us. And so that was really exciting. That went quite well. That was on June 26th. And we're just kind of following up on the excitement and hoping to perhaps have some more events within the same series.
And I know, because you've been doing a little bit of, you're part of another group that does a little bit of like kind of networking as well, and kind of introducing people who are sort of kind of congregating to this industry or to this concept as well. So it'll be exciting to see, kind of the next series of events. And so where can people find out about what's next?
Yeah, so the best place to find out about what's next is to follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn. I talk about a lot of the work that I do there. There's also our website, 𝐓𝐻𝐻𝐿.co. And finally, if you do a search on Eventbrite, you might also be able to find some of the events that we are hosting.
Awesome. All right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what is happening in, and maybe some of this came out of Tech Week, but what is sort of on the forecast for AI? I think it's, for some of us, it's me. I'm at sort of the basic level. I'm still learning a bit more. I'm trying to kind of keep up on sort of what's available, test out some of the newer tools, try to follow people like you who are kind of offering us sort of guidance on some of the bigger picture things. But what's sort of coming up in the industry? I think we've seen, kind of it pop into mainstream in the sense that, there were have been all these sort of pop-up creative things that you can do where people are, doing a lot of meme work or social posts. But what is sort of in the kind of forefront for you, I guess, kind of as we are in mid 2025, of what is happening in AI from that perspective?
Yeah, I think that it's great to see that people are experimenting a little bit more with tools. I truly think that while AI is, some people perceive it as a tool, I perceive it as a bit of a revolution, our fourth revolution, fourth industrial revolution. It really is going to have such an impact on absolutely every part of our lives and every industry that exists. And so while at first, I think we can immediately see how it might augment and shape knowledge work, there is a future where it's also going to have some impact on kind of, physical labor and blue collar work, so to speak. And so the best thing that I think people can do is just continue to get familiar with not just AI tools, because the tools will change. There will be new tools every day, and that might be hard to keep upon, but to really start to understand some of the underlying technology itself and just getting a better grasp of what the capabilities are, because then you can kind of project out a little bit further and forecast what things might change or where there might be opportunities. I think it's still so early, and maybe people hear that all the time, but I think it really is quite early. We have another, several years until we're even getting to, I think, the peak capabilities with AI. And so it's a great time to kind of just start to jump in and use some of these tools to even help you understand what might be coming. There's
a breakdown, right? Or sorry, you carry on.
I was just going to say there's tools like, deep research from several providers where it's the perfect use case for something like this, where you ask the question, based on this information or based on this industry, what do you foresee, coming down the pipe, and that can be really helpful.
And I think there's a different category maybe of there's the LLM and then there's kind of there's kind of developing maybe separate streams of not exactly the tools, companies that are coming out with these things, but there's also there's the language models, there's the kind of background work, there's the maybe what's more related to warehousing and robotics. Like I feel like there's different kind of segments as well that,
Yeah.
and where if you're a 101 level, then it's like AI, and you're like, but I think there are these sort of different streams. Do you want to talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, there certainly are different streams. Artificial intelligence is like this really broad category, and within it, like you mentioned, there's neural networks, there's deep learning, there's large language models, and then there's generative pre-trained transformers, which is our chat GPTs and our chatbots. But there really are so many different versions or categories of artificial intelligence. We also have generative AI, which is what has become more popular recently, but we've had predictive AI for upwards of 50 years, where some of that technology has already been employed and used in industries like supply chain and logistics. And so it's kind of choosing the right tool for the right job, and when it makes sense, putting them together and using them together. And so it's interesting sometimes for people to learn that AI itself is not new. We just have a new version of AI, which is generative AI. And sometimes based on what you're trying to accomplish, predictive AI might be the better tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's fascinating too. Yeah, that we've actually probably been working with it for much longer than we understand or realize. But it's sort of either if it has a rebrand or has like a new kind of tool version has come out, and so then it becomes sort of popular and we're talking about it. Yeah, and everybody wants to be up on that kind of the latest technology as well, and we all want to see, there is the sort of the broad claims that this will make life easier, this will make work easier, and everybody's kind of like, I think between the last decade, probably from 2008, a lot of us have felt like work has been very challenging. There's been a lot of external challenges, through the last couple of years, and we've had a lot of external challenges, especially in supply chain around how brands are buying, how consumers are changing from brick and mortar to being online to going back to brick and mortar. And then you have all of these kind of supply chain and geopolitical situations that are happening around. We've got a blocked shipping lane in the Middle East, so that's kind of rediverting. So it's just kind of a lot of, for someone like me or someone who's a practitioner is feeling like there's a lot of pressure. And if it's like, oh, this can do what for me? Oh, that, save me an hour of time a day. Like, of course, everybody's kind of really kind of perk their ears up trying to feel out what those tools might be and how we can start to integrate it into processes. So I think, yeah, there's just a big boom in that curiosity, probably because we're all like tired and just want some help. So yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Let's jump in. We do have we've got a couple of articles we'll talk to you today. I mean, I can ask you questions all day because I love hearing from you about what you're working on and kind of the perspective that you bring around like you said, but focusing on augmentation versus replacement, like that to me is kind of the biggest or biggest caution or concern that I think we want to take into this. So I can talk to you all day about that. But we are on Let's Talk Supply Chain. We're on Thoughts and Coffee, so we have to talk about some of our articles here. So we'll jump into Sarah and the Let's Talk Supply Chain team do a poll every week. So this one was around efficiency, right? And so what are the most critical factor for optimizing supply chain efficiency in your daily operations? And so we had quite a few responses to this one. I jumped in as well and put my vote in. And so the choices were real-time data, good supplier relationships, effective forecasting, and then agility and flexibility. And I think my opinion, while good supplier relationships can't be beat, in this case for the efficiency, it's the real-time data. It's really having the information at hand on how many shipments you have, what inventory you have, in which warehouses, in which countries, in which SKUs. So I think that having that is sort of invaluable. And I think the audience agreed. It was about 41% on that one. The second kind of choice was the effective forecasting. So yeah, if you're sitting in more consumer goods and in a stock position, you definitely want to know that forecasting. What are people buying? That's always the big question, is trying to figure out what they're up to. Agility and flexibility kind of came in third, and then good supplier relationships. So Yeah. What do you think, Rose? It's not necessarily your jam in supply chain, but what would you think is the kind of key for optimization?
Yeah, I would default to real-time data because I come from a data background. I started my work in this sector in revenue operations, and it's very data heavy. And so even transitioning into AI, there's very little you can do without great data, without good data that's clean and up to date. And so I would absolutely default to real-time data as well. Also considering all the shifts that you mentioned, I think that it's even more imperative that people have access to real-time data. There's so many trends that come in and go, and sometimes the difference is being able to take advantage or leverage those trends, and that's something that you may not be able to if you don't have real-time data.
I agree. Yeah, it was a fun one, I think, for people to kind of think it through. Like I say, the supply relationships, like those are integral, but I think in a different area. I think when we're talking optimization, it's got to be the data. So yeah. All right, well, let's dive into our first article. We're talking about tariff engineering. This comes in from CNBC. Tariff engineering is making a comeback. I think it's if you're in trade compliance, it's kind of always been there. It's manufacturers rethinking product designs, tapping into this technique as tariff engineering to lower tariff costs, because it means you can access different HS codes based on small modifications to the product. If you have shoes or something like that, you can make kind of slight tweaks to avoid avoid tariffs, but to avoid a more expensive tariff than what might be available. So I know a lot of trade compliance people, it's used as an advantage to the business if you can do the research on the product. So this goes into how with kind of the increasing tariffs and the kind of global situation that's happening around kind of higher duties, the article kind of outlines how to look into changing, finding any sort of advantage, really. And this talks about as well, it's not, in trade compliance, getting creative, right? We always want to avoid the bounds of kind of being fraudulent or being illegal or untoward. And I think this does a good job of making those comments. I did speak with a customs lawyer in DC to kind of outline here's kind of how you would do it appropriately. What did you think of the article?
I thought it was interesting. It makes sense. As a consumer, it helped me kind of understand why sometimes a product that I've loved and used and know so familiar or feel so familiar with might be slightly different, repurchasing it this time around. And sometimes that's just, I purchased this 3 years ago and, I'm purchasing it today. There might have been changes, but even something where, you purchase it on a regular basis, it adds context as to why there might be slight modifications, slight changes. And I think that, lower tariffs or, an adjustment on tariffs on products on the manufacturing side, hopefully that translates to better pricing for me as a consumer. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And I think one of the examples they gave, it's actually a big improvement on the product, I think, because it's they were ditching synthetic material, but we'll keep going. There, I'm back. Okay. So it outlines some of those key examples as well. So you can look to, the example of this hoodie, which switches the materials, which I don't know, I think it's better natural fibers than the synthetics. That's usually good in the garment industry. And then it outlines a couple of other specifics that are worth checking into. Yeah. Let's pop into our next one. We're talking about wearable. tech activities in defined and becoming part of everyday life. And so this is looking at the wearable tech market, which is projected to reach USD, so in US dollars, 256.4 billion by 2026. So by next year, that's the size of this market. So one of the main areas of use, and I mean, I've got my step tracker is health. So that biomedical research, the healthcare kind of personal practices with wearable tech. Do you have any thoughts here on this aspect of wearable tech, Rose?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I certainly see how it's going to grow, especially being in the AI space. I think that, augmented reality and the metaverse and, Web3 is, closely intertwined. I know that when we're talking about wearable tech in this instance, we're talking about more from a health perspective, but I think there are so many instances that we can already see where wearable tech is becoming more popular and mainstream. Even if you think about glasses that have AI embedded in them, that's wearable tech. And because we can already see this happening, something that I like to do in my practice is encourage people to start to think about wearable tech policies. There are, like the article says, concerns or needing to navigate privacy, compliance, and misinformation. There are very real scenarios where you go into, another workplace or into an institution or organization, and if somebody is wearing a device that is able to kind of capture data without the consent of the people around them, there are considerations that need to be made there. Similarly, if you have an organization and somebody's coming in, are you at risk of proprietary information being exposed? And so these are questions that are important to consider and for us to think about as wearable tech grows. Like like you mentioned, we know that this industry is growing.
And I think too, it's on us a bit to kind of check all of these the permissions that are available or that we can control. And I think it's nice. There are a lot of kind of consumer reports or consumer feedback on the apps that we're using or on the tech that we're using. So it's kind of to check there as well, because there are people who really like to get into those details. So you can kind of offer up the advice as well of, well, this kind of brand is doing this, and it exposes you to this kind of risk. And so I think that's become more of a concern of how are companies using our data, especially if we're giving them kind of daily, like if they know that my step count is at this and they know that my sleep is at this, then obviously the inclination is to start to push, like, oh, here's how, push those brands or products or something that encourages me to sleep better or encourages me to get more steps in or something. And so, but what is the privacy concern on? I think Target has a good case study on that from quite a few years ago, just on their buying, how they were tracking people's buying. So I think it is a concern, and for us to kind of do some diligence there and understand what kind of the implications are, or take the approach to kind of share as well with people what to think about. So yes, I thought this was a good one, because it did kind of go into what to look for and what to consider, right? Because I'm just excited to, like, oh, I'll know how fit I'm feeling, and it's like, oh, but also who actually is looking at this, if it's just me or if it's kind of going out in the world.
Yeah, imagine if your insurance provider had information on how many steps you're taking, what you're eating, and that's going to impact your premiums. So there's like these great things and clear benefits, and then, like you said, we want to be very aware of the privacy and how our data is being shared and what consent mechanisms we have access to, because there's always two sides, right? There's benevolent and benefits, and then there's sometimes where there's actors that might not have the same goals in mind.
For sure. Well, today we're wrapping up with a post that you made on LinkedIn, and it's around practical actions for leaders at companies using AI tools today. So this comes from, and we want everybody to kind of follow you on LinkedIn to see kind of what you're working on. But you want to go through kind of what this was about and how this came, what prompted you to share this one?
Yeah, I think that I sometimes, come across folks who don't agree with fundamentally the way that generative AI models have been developed, being trained on, data that is not compensated properly. And so they say, I'm not going to engage with this technology at all. And what I'm trying to do is encourage people to engage with the technology, but do it in a way that is considerate of ethics, considerate of safety, privacy, centering humans, and making sure that we're not being replaced in the work that we're doing. And so this was kind of trying to provide some practical steps for leaders to start to think about AI use in their companies. And it really is, I think, an opportunity for people to not feel so overwhelmed with the thought of AI, like, oh, I don't know this technology that all that well. I use ChatGPT sometimes, but like, I don't even know where to start. And so here I'm saying you can start by just taking a look at what tools are being used right now, because tools are being used, whether they're sanctioned by the organization or not. They probably are being used, even if it's something like Google, Gemini, or something that's baked into tools that you already have access to as an organization. So just kind of take stock of those tools. Start to look at who in your organization can help hold accountability for the way tools are being used, and can raise some questions. They can flag any risks that come up. It's important that we understand AI is not like any technology that we have experienced before, and so simply relegating it or delegating it, to AI, to IT is not going to be sufficient in this instance. And so taking a look at where shared responsibility can be, and then looking at providing some guidance for folks that work with you in an organization on how to use AI, when to question its outputs, further understanding the technology and the mechanisms itself to help inform how you use it, when you use it, and why you use it. And then really just understanding that this is responsible AI is, it's not just kind of a technical approach. It's also a leadership approach. It's an organizational approach. It makes perfect sense that this is kind of like a cultural decision or a values-based decision, that's going to complement some of the technical interventions.
I think that's so well put. And what I loved about this, from, even if we brought it on as an article for this, but I had looked at it because it really takes this conversation as well and brings some awareness to, it's not IT. It's not IT. It is comprehensive. And like you said, it's values, right? So it's, we've at the company I work for, we've had these conversations as well, from our graphics team, from our sales team, being like, I'll just show the customer this. You're like, we have a graphics team. We have a graphics team who's doing very creative, innovative work. And, so it's bridging that. This is quick and available. It's now embedded into a lot of tools, whether we want it or not. But bringing that awareness to, what does that mean for our overall company value or overall interaction or client success level? And then also that to have a group or to have a consistent discussion on what's available, and having the usage policies as well, because again, jumping back into the privacy piece, some of them, are you just feeding information that might be proprietary or private to your company that is now into ChatGPT and searchable and usable? So I thought it was a great way for people to start the conversation, and also really take, embed some of the I guess themes or values that you espouse as well on, this is the importance of the ethics piece, or how this is how you approach that. So I thought it was a great thing for people.
Thank you.
We'll look at, I think you'll get a little bump on followers after this episode, so that people can learn more. Okay, so I have to cover, where is it here? Okay, we are looking at Here we go. Okay, so the upcoming events for Let's Talk Supply Chain, and bear with us, we're going to go a couple minutes over. So online, you've got how tariff exemptions are quietly changing what we buy and use. So that's today at 10. No, that was us. That was Thoughts of Coffee, I think. On Thursday next week, July 17th, you've got Unify Your Fleet. So Sarah's talking to about streamlining operations, cutting costs, and delivering on time with a special guest. So tune into that. On July 24th, we've got how to build a resilient supply chain, real world strategies that work. So that's another great conversation that's coming up. And then in person, and I really wanted to highlight this because it's been a fun conversation Sarah and I have been having. But IANA, which a lot of you will be attending, is in kind of mid-September in Long Beach, California. But watch out because there's a pickleball slam. So if you know Sarah, she's gotten really into pickleball, and it sounds like a lot of you have. I haven't yet. I'm on the pickleball thing. But yeah, IANA is going to be hosting a pickleball slam. So if you're heading to that, you don't want to miss it. Yeah, otherwise, Rose, thank you so much for your time today and your insights. Again, it's always great having a conversation with you and learning more on our AI journeys and how we're doing it responsibly. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thanks to everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of the week.